Hey folks, we have a sale with one of our favorite sponsors, Sunset Lake Sebede, and it started earlier this week, or at the very least it starts today. No, it starts today, I think. But what matters more is that it ends Monday, December 22nd, 2024, end of day, Eastern Time. 25% off all Sunset Lake Sebede products with the code HOLIDAY. Every order will receive a free mystery sample, and orders of over $125 get a free jar of Sebede gummy bears. Folks, skip the stress of long lines and last-minute scrambles this holiday season. Sunset Lake not only makes shopping easy, but they also ship directly to you and your loved one's door. Until December 22nd, everything on sunsetlakesebede.com is 25% off when you check out with the coupon code HOLIDAY. But that's not all. Orders over $100 qualify for free priority shipping. Orders over $125 receive a free jar of Sebede gummy bears, and every other order gets a free mystery sample. Why not stock your family stockings with some fresh farm Sebede this year? I hadn't even thought about that. It's perfect stocking stuffer. It can help your parents find relief from achy joints and help you deal with the stress of holiday travel. I said this before, I am a daily user of Sunset Lake Sebede, whether it's that lotion that's on the other side of my desk. Here it is. I use this every single day, especially in the winter. And then at night, those nighttime gummies, they help me get to sleep so I'm refreshed in the morning and able to do the show. Head over to sunsetlakesebede.com, use code HOLIDAY to save 25% off and get some freebies. This sale ends December 22nd. See their site and terms for terms and conditions. And now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, December 13th, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live, steps, from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk and Krystal, Kyle and Friends joins us to wrap up This Week in News. Also on the program, the UN World Food Program reiterates that Gaza is close to famine. And winter cold presents new dangers for the Palestinians in Gaza. Israel says its troops will stay in the territory it illegally seized in Syria for now. Yeah, I don't think we should trust that. Just should go without saying.
I think I've heard that before.
Donald Trump is reportedly weighing airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites in a show of how anti-war he is. And he selects Tiffany's father-in-law, a Lebanese-American truck salesman who claims to be very rich but doesn't appear to be, as his top Middle East advisor. The Lebanese part is all he needed. Pete Hegseth's nomination for defense secretary is somehow still alive as the Senate takes its time to advise and consent. And that second part is the thing that Pete has the biggest problem with. In Ukraine, Thanks, Bradley. In Ukraine, Russian troops close in on the strategic eastern city of Pokrovsk, moving it at its fastest pace in years. Nancy Pelosi is trying to kill AOC's bid to be ranking member of the Oversight Committee, making calls for 74-year-old Jerry Connolly, who also has cancer.
And the New York Times just reported that Pelosi was hospitalized in a congressional delegation.
Oh my God. We need more of that in leadership.
Yeah.
Insanity.
Exit stage hospital, please.
Some more right-wing populism for you folks. Trump is trying to shrink and eliminate key bank regulatory agencies. And the SEC charges Cantor Fitzgerald, the financial firm led by Trump's Commerce Secretary pick, with crimes. RFK Jr.'s top legal advisor has petitioned the government to remove its approval of the polio vaccine. Amazon follows Meta, donates $1 million to Trump's inauguration. Time to bend the knee, all these corporations. And lastly, in France, Macron names yet another centrist as prime minister, despite the left-wing party having a plurality of seats, setting up more dysfunction. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Casual Friday. We have finally arrived at Friday. Hello, Matt. Hello, Bradley, who have been indispensable this week. Appreciate you all. Let's get right into it because I'm very excited to have Kyle on. It's been a long time coming. I've been a long-time fan of his show, and him and Krystal are a great team together, so we've been able to have a few conversations with Krystal recently. It'll be great to talk to Kyle about this moment in politics, especially as we wrap up 2024 in anticipation of Trump's inauguration. But the biggest story remains the killing of the United Healthcare CEO by Luigi Mangione, allegedly, still has to be proven, but it's the reaction. And it's not just like, I think that there's a lot of people in media that want to boil it down to like, oh, people are thirsting over him because the internet's stupid. That is not what it is.
There's some that all the time when a hot guy, again, the Night Stalker. Watch the Night Stalker documentary. He had groupies in the 90s. It was just a guy who was killing people. But this sort of thing is much different than that because most people, again, don't just support shooting people in the streets. But also, when you're presented, say, hey, feel sorry for this guy who, oh, by the way, he has a job that it sits him atop a pyramid of intense cruelty and death. People are going to have a reaction that way.
They are. And so I think a lot of very wealthy people are afraid right now. We saw that in the immediate aftermath, healthcare executives or hospital and pharmaceutical executives took their information off of websites. There was one healthcare CEO, or health insurance CEO is probably more accurate, that I think petitioned to remove his Wikipedia page, which you can see. So, or at least someone
security spending too.
Yeah, or at least someone connected to him. Doesn't that, if you're supposed to be providing care for people, but you need a security force to protect you from the people that you're supposedly taking care of with your for-profit business, doesn't that say it all? I don't know. Well, Peter Thiel, one of the richest guys in this country, in the world.
Government contractor Peter Thiel got a bunch of money for surveillance. Basically spying on you and selling all the collated information to police departments and other sort of security forces.
Also quite close with J.D. Vance, who is going to be the VP.
Oh, yeah. I mean, J.D. Vance basically his assistant.
And so when you hear Peter Thiel speak, this is probably a pretty good summary of how the right-wing populist, I say with the most sarcasm I can even muster, Republican administration that's incoming with Trump feels about this particular case. And we're gonna make fun of Peter Thiel because he's so bad at speaking and communicating, but he's also very afraid.
And to those who think this shooter is a hero because he did it because he said this healthcare executive was presiding over a healthcare system which kills thousands of Americans by denying them cover, what would you say to them?
You gonna cry?
I don't know what to say. I think I still think you should try to make an argument.
You should.
And I think this is you should, there may be things wrong with our healthcare system.
Oh, wow.
But you have to make an argument, and you have to try to find a way to convince people and change it by that. And this is not going to work. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are all sorts of things one could say about it, but
Try one.
I don't think, and I think I think the motives feel. I don't want to go into all the particulars.
Make
here,
an argument.
I don't think there's anything heroic about him.
I completely agree.
Oh gosh. Honestly, that point almost moved me to tears by how eloquently he made his argument. You've just got to make an argument.
It's the most beautiful thing in the world for the guys that are like, hey, this all runs on us expressing ourselves in the realm of ideas. I listen to that guy, and I definitely think, oh yeah, he's here because of the way he's able to form arguments and elaborate them to people. No, he's there because he has lots of money. He's there because he's actually going to make a lot of money off of this, selling surveillance information to government to make sure Peter here at Peter Thiel Industries Palantir, we're going to sell you a way to make sure you can keep an eye on all the people that your company is fucking over that might turn to violence. Like, this is money to this guy. But again, like you said, like the populism thing is just because they were out of power and in opposition, and anyone who is crediting it is a mark or a crypto fascist.
That's exactly right. He is going to make a lot of money in this administration because
$11.2 billion he has right now.
The casino is open. It's open for business. We are in an era where these oligarchs that are going to have a direct line in the Trump administration are going to try to loot the administrative state for parts. And as you mentioned, Thiel already has a lot of government contracts for security. He's going to get more, likely more security services that will benefit him with these healthcare CEOs probably enlisting him, but also along the border. His surveillance technology helps crack down on people trying to cross the border and seeking asylum. He's going to get more and more of those contracts to build the wall, but not a literal wall, by the way. Donald Trump came onto the political scene in 2016 promising that he would build a wall and Mexico would pay for it. No, now it's just going to be surveillance wall brought to you by Peter Thiel, getting your taxpayer money through government contracts to make sure that, I don't know, migrants trying to cross the Rio Grande don't get over to the border and essentially drown in those buoys that Greg Abbott put in the Rio Grande to make sure that it cut up a woman who was pregnant.
It's a difficult time for Peter Thiel and all of Peter Thiel's sort of media assets because they want to be celebrating as a folk hero Daniel Penny for choking a guy to death on the subway. But instead, there's the actual folk hero energy is getting pulled away on the exact same week that happened. And they're struggling now. They're struggling to figure out how to address this because it's all artificial. The idea that there's any sort of real popular energy on there is just it's much more helpful when you can project it onto a big rich guy like Donald Trump than these freaks that are actually behind the scenes.
Exactly. And did you see that JD Vance is bringing Daniel Penny as his special guest to the Army football game?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and they're desperate to make their version
can I make a point about that?
Yes.
I don't think that there's anything heroic about I can't say Daniel Penny.
I'm so moved by what you just said. JD Vance is bringing him to the Army Navy game. I think it's the Army Navy game, some football game for some stunt, because they're trying to will this guy who killed one of the poorest people in our society, an unhoused person, a homeless person who was having such difficulty. He choked him out for over 5 minutes on a subway car in broad daylight and then got away with it. That's for right-wing populism and the branding they're trying to get behind, even though we all know how ridiculous it is. That's their version of what a populist hero is. A dead-eyed white guy with a military background who goes onto the subway and protects all of the other respectable people from the hordes of poors that may make them a little bit uncomfortable for a second. The populist hero for them isn't the guy who did kill a healthcare CEO who was indirectly responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of other people in the so-called populist movement, or whatever, both the right and the left. The point is just like it's a false premise. Their version of populism is that these vigilantes and right-wing freaks that get to do whatever they want and crush the people that are below them, as opposed to when violence is directed towards the powerful, then these so-called politicians of the people, the populace, they shrink into a little corner and then they go, it's all an aesthetic. And if you fell for it, you're a mark.
And the point isn't who's a hero in this. The point is that in both of these stories, the number one villain, if you had to pick one person, is the healthcare CEO.
Yeah, exactly.
The one going to the deepest pit of hell is the healthcare CEO.
With that said, a word from one of our sponsors, Babbel. Have you ever thought about a gift for yourself this year? One that has the power to help you grow, learn, and get a better version of yourself in the next year? Give yourself the gift of language by getting Babbel. I am getting Babbel to learn a new language ahead of my travels for my honeymoon next year, and I'm very excited to get started. Babbel is the language learning app that gets you talking, speak like a whole new you, with a quick 10-minute lessons crafted by over 200 language experts. Babbel gets you talking with a new language in 3 weeks. And because talking is the key to really knowing a language, Babbel is designed for real conversation. Wasting hundreds on private tutors is the old way of learning how to speak a language. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when talking. It has a focus on conversation, so you'll be ready to talk wherever and whenever you go. Want more proof that Babbel gets you talking? Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and other leading universities continue to prove Babbel works. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is the equivalent to a full semester in college. With over 16 million subscribers sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. So your gift to yourself or your loved ones is risk-free. This holiday season, give the gift of language with Babbel, and here is a special holiday deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/majority. That's 60% off, up to 60% off at babbel.com/majority, spelled BABBEL.com/majority. Rules and restrictions may apply. A word from another one of our sponsors, and then we'll be speaking to Kyle Kulinski.
Hey, let's be honest. The thing that people really want for the holidays is to see their favorite people more often, right? They miss you. That's why this year, the best gift you can give, besides plane tickets or a helicopter or a teleporter, is an Aura digital picture frame. It is named the #1 digital frame, photo frame by Wirecutter. Aura frames are incredibly smart. They are super easy to use. They allow you to upload unlimited photos and videos directly from your phone to the frame. It's super easy. Load the app up. It automatically takes it up there. Plus, here's the amazing thing. You can order the frame online. You preload it with photos and videos using the Aura app. So when your parents, your cousins, your uncles, your sister, your brother, your kids, whoever it is, when they take the frame out of the box, they put it in there. If your parents don't know their Wi-Fi, you can set that up too. And as soon as they plug it in, bing, there's your pictures. It's a great gift to give and so easy to use. You're going to make someone's day every day. And frankly, it's also pretty cool to have in your own house. So get more and get more than one. Buy them a gift, buy yourself a gift. And incidentally, you can control the different frames, where it goes. Mom's frame, our frame. Save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off of Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames by using the promo code MAJORITY at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code MAJORITY. This deal is exclusive to listeners, so get yours now in time for the holidays. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, folks, several years ago, I was starting to experience a little bit of thinning. I don't know why, but it's mostly like on this side of my head. I don't know if it's because I sleep on that or whatnot, but it was getting a little bit more aggressive. Now I'm getting up there with age and whatnot, and I was thinking like maybe I would start to look into taking something for that, but I didn't want to take any drugs for it. Nutrafol comes along, and Nutrafol has a great reputation. It is completely drug-free, and there are no side effects that deal with sexual issues. And so I started taking it, and the results have been great for me. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand. It is trusted by over 1 million people, like I say, including me. You will see thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. Now, thinning hair is different for men and women, so a one-size-fits-all approach to hair growth doesn't cut it. Nutrafol has multiple formulas for men and for women that are tailored to different life stages, such as postpartum or menopause, and lifestyle factors, such as a plant-based lifestyle, so you can get just what you need. Also, sometimes aging is a situation. But Em and I both know women who have had a lot of success with Nutrafol, specifically one of Emma's friends, me, a friend of a friend. It's actually a pretty good story, but for another time. Physician formulated, 100% drug-free ingredients, like I say. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting key root causes of thinning: stress, hormones, aging, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism. It helps through whole body health. And the thing about Nutrafol, while a lot of supplements just rely on ingredient studies, Nutrafol clinically tests their final formulations. In a clinical study, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol men hair growth supplements for 6 months. 86% of women saw improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol women hair growth supplement for 6 months. With the Nutrafol subscription, building a hair growth routine is simple. You purchase online, no prescription necessary. Automated deliveries, free shipping, keep you on track. Plus, you can save up to 20%. You'll have access to free naturopathic doctor consults, and Headspace membership is included. Again, whole health helps your hair. The cold, dry air of winter can be unforgiving, but your hair doesn't have to suffer. For a limited time, Nutrafol offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping. When you go to Nutrafol.com, enter the promo code TMR. You can find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR. And now, back to the show.
It might take all the strength I got.
We are back, and I'm so excited to have on the show, long time coming, Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk, Krystal, Kyle, and friends. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, your posting game has kind of been getting me through, I would say, these past few weeks, because this might be the funniest tweet I've seen in quite a while. Nancy Mace went to barbecue for her birthday, and how many different kinds of beans is this? Kyle tweeted, "That's a lot of beans, you nasty ass bitch." And I saw another person saying, "Well, now we know why she's obsessed with bathrooms." So
that is so gross.
God, I don't want to be in a 6-foot radius of that lady right now. Holy moly.
I told Chris, I was like, man, because that was one of those tweets where I didn't think it just happened. Like, I saw it and that was my instant reaction and I just went with it. And afterwards,
flow state tweet.
That's exactly right. Krystal was like, man, you had a real moment of brilliance there, didn't you?
It really, honestly, that is, if you have a tombstone, there you go. You can just have that tweet basically superimposed on it.
It got big. People are making like graphics of me with how the motivational quotes with that.
Yeah. But Nancy Mace, truly, have you ever seen a thirstier politician in your life for attention?
Oh my God. It's so violent.
You read that story about how one of her staffers said she tried to get punched in the face on January 6th by one of the people. So for attention.
Right. And now she's saying, I was assaulted by some pro-trans person. And there's like 3 or 4 witnesses that was like, you got a handshake. What are you talking about?
Well, she thinks that just the mere presence of a trans woman in the bathroom means she's likely to be sexually assaulted, which, I don't know, perhaps a handshake for her is like what an assault would be for somebody else. But I don't know. Like, what do you think? I guess Nancy Mace is such a clown, but she is kind of representative of MAGA right now. Like, just headlines, substanceless, attention over everything else, and hoping that pays dividends for you in some way. And frankly, it's kind of working out for them. Although I will say that Trumpism without Trump, I do think is going to be a failure given his kind of unique charisma and hold over the MAGA cult. But this is a bit of a rambling question. I guess, what's your sense of how MAGA is positioned right now?
Well, I mean, how would you distract from the fact that we now have the billionaires completely and utterly taking over our government? That Trump has appointed countless billionaires, countless Wall Street executives. Doge is like this big thing now that even Democrats are like, I agree with them on this point and this point. And it's like, this is the distraction. The distraction is, I'm going to talk about trans people 24/7 and pretend like trans people are hurting you and screwing you and ruining your life. And just focus on this and don't look over here as we run out the back door with all the money. It's literally the oldest trick in the book. It's divide and conquer. And trans people are now a scapegoat in the same way that back in the day, it was gay people. You know, people forget there was a time not that long ago where the overwhelming majority of the country was against gay marriage, right? I believe it was in 2004, the Republicans ran on this idea of getting a constitutional amendment to define marriage as between man and a woman. And by the way, that was happening when? As the Iraq War was happening. So it's another divide and conquer. Hey, look over here, don't look over here. And the bottom line is, I'm now of the belief that you got to fight on both fronts. You got to fight. You got to put the focus where it should be, which is, hey, the billionaires are taking over the government, but also you have to defend these marginalized communities who are being scapegoated. They didn't do anything wrong. Who have trans people hurt? No, they're not hurting anybody.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you on that front. And I guess we thought that you and I both thought Kamala Harris is going to win this election.
Yeah, I did.
I was pretty bullish on my electoral map. I know you were as well, but that was part of it was what you talk about here, which is that broadly on the issues, we saw in 2022 how the Republicans ran on anti-trans stuff, and it didn't work out for them. But in 2024, with Donald Trump being at the top of the ticket and the force of his personality, the fact that he is a charismatic figure, and the fact that he's anti-establishment and hated by both Democrats and Republicans, I think really benefited him. And people are just taking the wrong lessons about, oh, it's time to throw trans people under the bus. No. You know, Stead Herndon made this point to us when he came on our show. The part of the problem was that the Democrats didn't have a primary where they could have hashed these issues out and performed democracy for the public. It was really difficult for them to sell the notion that they were the protectors of democracy when a majority of Americans thought Biden was too old to run again. And he did so anyway. There wasn't really a period of time where the Democrats could have had a debate about these issues, which would have been the publicity that they needed so people even knew where they stood. And it was an example for folks to be like, okay, they're not responsive to what we're saying. Overall, we don't want this guy to run again. We don't think he can do the job. So I don't know, might as well be entertained as our government doesn't respond to us at all.
Yeah, what I would say is Trump proved that you could be the most divisive person in the entire country and win. He was just divisive along the incorrect lines. He told people, all of your problems are real, they're legitimate, you're angry, but the problem is the immigrants. The problem, it's the trans people. And he hammered that away over and over and over, and that was his narrative. And people are angry, they're pissed off, and they don't really know where to point their anger, right? And the problem with the Democrats, it was they didn't have a counter narrative to take on that narrative. The counter narrative has to be, they're wrong. Immigrants are not the problem. Trans people are not the problem. The problem, it's Elon Musk. It's the robber barons. It's the billionaires. It's the corporations who've bought our government, rigged our government to represent them, and never represent you. And so the fact that the Democrats were more technocratic and they're more status quo managers who call for decent policies, but it's like little tweaks around the edges, that just left the lane wide open for a demagogue like Trump to win. And he ended up winning by talking about Arnold Palmer's cock. He ended up winning by saying immigrants are eating cats and they're eating dogs. Like, for people to take away, oh, I think we should cave to the right on certain issues and maybe be more kind to the right on many issues. My takeaway is the exact opposite. You can be as unhinged, as arrogant, as divisive as you want to be, as long as you keep coming home to your narrative of the problem is the billionaires, the problems, it's the donor class. That's what we need to do.
I mean, the idea that you would be taking anything of substance out of this election in terms of like what Donald Trump ran on specifically is an entire misreading of the political moment. Because as you say, part of what gave me confidence, and maybe you as well, was the idea that his campaign was so undisciplined from a message perspective. And you had the through line of they're coming after me, they're trying to shoot me, and also immigrants are horrible, and Kamala Harris is a bitch that should get punched in the face. And those were the kinds of things where it's like, okay, I just don't necessarily see what I saw in 2016, where he at the very least was talking about how Bernie Sanders was right to call Hillary Clinton corrupt and co-opting that messaging, or the free trade, anti-free trade posture. He was at the very least speaking to that anger. And this time around, he was entirely incoherent, which is an even greater indictment on the Democratic Party branding. Not really for me, any specific candidate, but it's like, give people an enemy. They're angry. And the enemy is who you say. It's the wealthy, it's the elites who are, and we can talk about the Luigi Mangione shooting in a bit, but alleged. But that is like, that's that anger that they just completely didn't tap into. And it's clearly there. They should have.
Yeah, and none of them are coming to the correct lessons now, because you don't see this like massive uptick in anger and narrative driving. If anything, you see what we discussed before, which is like, oh, I don't know, maybe on immigrants we cave a little bit more, even though Kamala ran on a super strict border bill and said Trump is the one who tanked it. It's just, if anything, this election shattered everything about the way I understand politics, in the sense that the main takeaway is, as long as you're angry and you have a narrative, you can get away with almost anything at all. And that's what Trump did. And it's kind of sad how easy it is to convince people, no, seriously, the source of your problem, it's the immigrants. Like, oh, your wages are low and you don't have good health care and this and that. Well, you know, maybe if we deport 20 million people, that'll be better off for you. I mean, that's functionally the argument of the right. And I'm now of the belief, don't give even an inch on that argument. Not an inch. You got to fight back on all fronts and make clear these are not the enemies.
Yeah, the Democrats have unfortunately not been doing that, though, because the only way that they hit the Republicans in that election was on hypocrisy, was on process, as opposed to the substance of the immigration point. It was like Donald Trump, he doesn't care about you. He wanted to kill this right-wing border bill that reinforces the Republican Party's framing on the issue of immigration. And what do you know? It was the same. In many ways, it does shatter our perception, but it's also the same story that we've been telling, I would say, since 2016, which is that if you try to be Republican light, people go with the real thing basically every time, unless there's a global pandemic or, we're at the end of a really unpopular Iraq war and the economy is crashing.
Yeah. And if you think back to Bernie, he was able to spark a movement because he had a narrative. And even though he was like 1,000 years old and he's kind of like a humorless old guy, I mean, and I love Bernie, I mean that with love, but like just the fact that he had a narrative and he kept hammering away on it, he was able to go from like 2% in the polls to 48% in the polls in 2016. And it's like, wow. Now imagine if you have somebody with that narrative and with that anger, but you also sprinkle in the entertainment value and the humor. I mean, honestly, it should be easy to defeat these charlatans, but this is now he's 2 for 3 in elections, and that requires some soul searching. The Democrats ceding the ground to him on this allowed him to paint immigration as a pro-worker narrative, which is you're fighting on his grounds. Exactly. He framed the conversation, and you followed him down that path, as opposed to saying, no, I reject your framing. Here's the reality. Why did you put so many Wall Street people in your administration last time and so many billionaires? Why are you doing it again this time? Like, why is your number one legislative accomplishment a massive tax cut for the rich, where 83% of the benefits went to them? You're not pro-worker. We lost 200,000 jobs. What are you talking about? You have to totally reframe the conversation, and there's very few leaders who are willing and able to do that and know how to do that.
And Trump firing Lena Khan and basically replacing her with Andrew Ferguson, who, can we pull up this document that Punchbowl News obtained? We read this on the show the other day. I'm sure you've seen this, Kyle, where basically it shows how Andrew Ferguson, Trump's pick for the FTC, who previously worked as chief counsel to Mitch McConnell, by the way, says that, oh, yeah, we're going to go against the reverse Lena Khan's anti-business agenda, you can see there. And a lot of this is about wokeness and the radical left and DEI and all of that. But turns out, what do you know? J.D. Vance's lip service about loving Lena Khan was a lie, just like his lip service about loving the child tax credit, a vote that he never showed up for, was a lie. Like, they were grifting, and you know what? They're not being held accountable for it because in many ways, Trump doesn't have a full constituency outside of his cult. Like, he can almost do anything and get away with it. Yep. And that is an indictment on the opposition and their tactics.
Didn't J.D. Vance get like a 10% or a 0% on his AFL-CIO scorecard?
Pretty sure.
They say, oh yeah, he's a populist, but then you do a little bit of research and you're like, hold on, he said he was for the extended child tax credit, and he literally didn't even show up to vote for it when he could have. What are you talking about? You dig deeper in his record. Oh, turns out he's not for the PRO Act. Well, that's like the key dividing line of whether or not you're a populist, whether or not you're for the working class. And so Trump, same thing. You know, I keep bringing this up, but he outsourced 200,000 jobs when he was president after he ran as the anti-outsourcing guy. There's no substance to the idea that these people are populist or they're pro-worker or they're anti-establishment. And to your point, Lena Khan was like the main one here, where it was like, look, if he fires Lena Khan, okay, he was completely and utterly full of shit. And I don't know about you, but I haven't seen much of a MAGA backlash over Lena Khan being fired. I've seen absolute crickets. It's almost like they follow the cult leader wherever the cult leader wants to go, and they're not actually populist. They're not actually anti-establishment. They're not actually pro-worker.
That's why the idea that we can unite with the, quote, populist right, you would have to fight for the right things. That would require the populist right giving a crap about about these kinds of things, right? Where, as you say, I just don't necessarily think that constituency exists. They're just MAGA, and there's no backlash on the substance. It's just that they love when Trump triggers the libs. The only thing that I can think of where they had a splinter was on the vaccines. And even though Trump did Operation Warp Speed, they still don't hold him accountable for it. He's the anti-vax guy that created all these mRNA vaccines that are, I don't know, giving you all these health problems, apparently, they say.
Yeah, look, it's very simple. They don't mean it. They don't believe it. All of it's posturing, all of it's virtue signaling. Because they've had countless instances where they could have stood up and said, sir, I disagree with this. And they haven't done it. And so, you know, in 2016, I could understand the argument, and perhaps I was more sympathetic to the argument of like, look, he did say some anti-outsourcing stuff. Maybe he means it. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe there are minor areas where you could work with them or whatever. But it's no longer 2016. We already have Trump's first whole time in office to see how he's going to act. The best predictor of future action is past action. And across the board, he was a total con artist. Like, he was George W. Bush on steroids. And so to think now that's going to be different, based on what? Based on what? How would that be? He's snuggled up to Elon Musk at the hip as Elon Musk is waging war against the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the NLRB. Like, this is their agenda.
It's because people are tired of it. It's because it's branding. I really do think that. I think that in also, like, what Morning Joe did, going and kissing the ring. Yep. Like, they're like, one, they're worried about their access. But I think even more broadly, what has been disconcerting is the despondency that I'm seeing in reaction from a lot of people, where it's just like, maybe we need to take our medicine and accept this. And it's like, no, this is the opposite. This is when we should all be resisting and coming together. And I'm not seeing as much of that as was the case when he first got elected. But that also wasn't a strategic resistance in many ways. Like, a lot of that was focused on Putin and stuff that ended up being pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, so MSNBC's ratings have basically tanked 50%. And there's a lot of MSNBC refugees. And guess what? They are fleeing to spaces like ours, We now
Right.
have the MSNBC refugees, because now I look at the situation and I go, you need to quadruple the resistance from the last time. The idea that now we're supposed to take this guy seriously because we won the election, guess what? Because he won the election, guess what? He was still talking about Arnold Palmer's cock the whole time. He's still going to outsource more jobs. He's still going to do more war. Like, let's not pretend like this is anything different than what we know it is now.
And you brought up the war piece. Wall Street Journal reported this last night, that he is weighing whether or not his administration should do airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, which is what Israel wants him to do. I'm reminded of Maureen Dowd's 2016 opinion piece in the New York Times called Donald the Dove, Hillary the Hawk. And to be fair, she got that second half correct. Definitely not the first part. If you could just talk, you've been on this for a while, the myth of Donald Trump as the anti-war candidate.
Well, first of all, he actually said this same thing on the campaign trail, and nobody talked about it. And it drove me crazy. He was having some interview, and he was like, yeah, I think Israel should attack Iran's nuclear sites. It's like, what? Like, he said it. This should have been the biggest story in the country, and I saw hardly any conversation around it. So basically, this is Trump saying, yeah, the thing I said before, I believe it now also. Just the other part of it is, how do people think this is going to unfold? If Israel attacks Iran's nuclear facilities, then Iran, of course, is going to fight back. And then, of course, we're going to see this movement. Hey, we need to back our ally Israel as they defend themselves against Iranian aggression. This is how it's going to be framed. And Trump, we know he took $100 million from Miriam Adelson, and there was a quid pro quo there, like, you have to let us totally annex the West Bank. But the other part of that is, yeah, they want us to fight Israel's wars. That's what they want. And the thing that drives me crazy is anybody who actually cares and goes beyond just vibes, if you wanted to look into what is Trump's foreign policy, it's all out there right in front of us. When he was in office last time, he signed a pro-torture executive order. He pardoned Blackwater war criminals who partook in that Nisour Square massacre when they gunned down innocent civilians.
Which Hegseth lobbied for, by the way.
Correct. Hegseth was the reason that they got that pardon, and Trump was like, sure, I'll go right along with it. Trump's first military raid as president killed a young American girl. His very first foreign policy decision killed a young American girl. He hired John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and Gina Haspel, all these insane neocon warmongers. He dropped the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan. Now he's talking about war with Mexico. And the reporting is that right now they're discussing how far exactly should we go? How big should the war be? Should we just do drone strikes and some maybe targeted airstrikes? Or should we put some boots on the ground and go in there that way? These are the conversations that they're having. So the notion that this guy, that in any world, he would be anti-war, it's an absolute joke. It's a catastrophic joke. And, you know, from these same people, I find that they never call a spade in the other direction, too. Like, I remember when Biden actually pulled out of Afghanistan, nobody was defending him. I was like, hold on. There was like 70 of you just last week were saying this is one of the top issues is getting out of Afghanistan. Then Biden does it, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we're not even going to mention. I remember Tulsi Gabbard? She put that as like central to her personality, and then Biden pulls out, and she didn't say a goddamn word about it. And it's like, they're all fraudulent. They're all hacks. I can't stand them. And it's time for people to wake up and realize that exactly how he was last time, it's going to be like that this time, except probably worse, because now he has that added element of authoritarianism that he can get away with. There are no guardrails anymore where you have the Mark Millies or other people saying, sir, I'm sorry, you can't shoot protesters in the leg. We don't do that here. Sir, I'm sorry, you can't invoke the Insurrection Act. That's a bad idea. Now it's loyalist sycophants all around him and a Supreme Court that said, you have complete and utter immunity for anything that's even remotely official.
Right. Which is, by the way, and I'm reading a book right now called Homeland by Richard Beck, and it's about how how the war on terror and the Bush administration really led us to the moment that we're in, including the Trump administration, because that is really the, I think, apex of what the Bush administration was trying to do with the executive. What was the executive theory? Unitary executive theory, essentially, right? Which is just like, if the president does it, it means it's a legal action, and there shouldn't be guardrails. Like, isn't that the final form of what they were trying to do under Bush with Cheney?
Yes, that's exactly right. And this is like part and parcel of the idea of Project 2025. The whole idea is we want unitary executive theory of power We want Trump to be basically an emperor, and then we want all little loyalist sycophants around him. We want to absolutely destroy the parts of the government that are actually good, things like the Department of Education or the NLRB or the CFPB, and they want to handcuff the regulatory state so there is no regulatory state. Let big business get away with whatever the hell they want to get away with, and then let the robber barons loot the treasury. Let Elon Musk loot the treasury. Let Vivek Ramaswamy loot the treasury. Give away the, I'm sure you saw the article. What is it now? Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg, like all these people are now going down to Mar-a-Lago, kissing the ring and giving Trump $1 million checks for his inauguration. Well, what do you guys think this is? This is obvious quid pro quo, complete bribery and corruption. Now they're opening up the door to keep the corporate welfare coming, the subsidies coming, the tax cuts coming, the government contracts coming. And all the while, what are they going to do? Turn around and cut grandma's Social Security check and cut Medicare and cut Medicaid to give the oligarchs and the robber barons even more money. It's really disgusting.
It really is. And in terms of the anti-war stuff, it's not discussed enough how Donald Trump's foreign policy led us to the current chaos that we're in. And this is not to absolve Biden of his complete complicity in genocide, but more so than complicity.
Lock him up.
Lock him up.
Lock them all up. I agree.
I mean, right, like we're consistent on this front. Biden is a war criminal. There should be an ICC warrant out for him. If we were to actually apply international law in any real way, we have seen over the past year and a half how obviously insincere that idea is. But like the Abraham Accords started as a Trump policy, Biden continued it. But he also did more drone strikes than Obama did in 2 terms and removed the reporting requirements for that. The Abraham Accords of trying to normalize with Saudi Arabia and other Arab nations while not dealing with the Palestinian people whatsoever created a sense of desperation for Hamas, where then Biden's in office. Okay, they thought potentially maybe there could be a shift in policy. No, there isn't. He's continuing the same policy of let's not deal with the Palestinian issue. We can keep 3 million Palestinians in a ghetto, 2 million in an open air prison, and then bomb the hell out of them on occasion to mow the lawn. And it'll be fine because U.S. influence in the region is paramount. That's what the message was said to Hamas. And Trump started that. Trump began that process to where we are, where now he's going to come into office and likely just allow Israel to ethnically cleanse the entire West Bank because, as you mentioned, Miriam Adelson gave him $100 million.
Yeah, and also another thing nobody talks about is Trump ripped up the Iran agreement. This agreement was working. There were over a dozen times the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, went into Iran and they looked at their facilities and they said, they're abiding by the rules and the regulations. They are not enriching to the point of getting a nuclear weapon. They're using this power for their power grid and for scientific research as they're allowed to do. And in return for that, all we did was ease sanctions on them and give them back their own money that we stole. Everything was working. Everything was hunky-dory. He comes in and rips it up. And then I always love when they're like, Iran is even closer to a nuclear weapon now. My goodness. And they're like, oh, man, we got to crack down even harder. Right. We got to do more sanction. And it's like, you do realize that you're the reason we are where we are. If you just kept that deal in place and abided by it, then there would be no problem at all.
Because that's not their intention, right, Kyle, though? It's to create a pretext for war, right?
That's exactly right. Because
they're insincere.
They want it. They keep pretending like it's somehow defensive, right? No, this is aggressive. This is offensive. We've all seen that clip of General Wesley Clark saying, hey, here are the countries that the U.S. wants to overthrow. And oh, would you look at that? Libya was on the list. Syria was on the list. Iraq was on the list. Those are all gone now. And now we have, of course, Iran, which is up next.
Right. Let's play this short clip that Matt has up here.
It's RFK and Dave Smith who helped commodify the libertarian movement to sell it to Maga. Here he is asking RFK a relevant question. And this is the Maverick RFK giving you his straight answer, unafraid to speak the truth.
Do you have concerns about the level of Israeli influence in our politics here in the United States of America?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a politician in political office, so I don't see much of that.
Do you?
That was a Mitch McConnell pause.
Yeah, right. I thought the video froze for a second. Turns out not as interested in Big Pharma. He'll talk until the cows come home about their influence on our politics. But Israel,
he doesn't want to nationalize.
Yeah, right. 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 No, instead, apparently one of his top legal advisors has advocated for the federal government to remove the polio approval, which we are basically people. Do you know what it was like before the polio vaccine? Children were dying all the time.
Yep.
Children were dying. People were getting paralyzed. If they survived, they were paralyzed. There was a president, a very famous president, who was afflicted with that condition as a child, FDR. It's insanity. It's insanity.
No, by the way, I don't know about you guys, but I'm convinced they got dirt on him. The Israelis have dirt.
Of course.
On RFK. There's no doubt about it. There was a lot of speculation from pretty credible sources that perhaps Jeffrey Epstein was linked to Mossad.
Yes.
Right? So,
well, we've said that on the show because Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was very obviously a part of Mossad. Like, I don't even think that's controversial to say. He had deep links with Israeli intelligence. And wasn't Menachem Begin on Epstein's plane?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what did he say? He said something like, I got so many skeletons in my closet that if they could vote, I'd win in a landslide. That's what RFK said. And it's like, geez, man, what are those skeletons? Remember when he was on Andrew Schultz's podcast and he was like, yeah, look, I mean, I hung out with everybody where I was living. We hung out with Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein. He goes down the list of like all the words. I'm surprised he didn't say Diddy on that list too. Maybe he did hang out with Diddy also. But like, yeah, I really think they have dirt on this man because it's so, I mean, he's just not anti-war too. That's the other point to make, right? Him and Tulsi, they virtue signal like they're anti-war, and they support the complete and utter obliteration and annihilation and slaughter of innocent Palestinian civilians and wiping Gaza off the map right in front of our faces. There's no world where you can say you're anti-war and you got the pom-poms and you're cheerleading this on. I mean, the guy's a total fraud. I don't even agree with people who think like, well, on health issues, I think he makes some points. And even Bernie said this, bless his heart, because Bernie's, he talks about the ultra-processed foods and all those issues. But again, the problem is RFK believes in junk science. He believes in alternative medicine. If he's right about anything, it is totally ancillary to his main project. And his main project is honestly, alternative medicine kookery. There's a reason why alternative medicine is called alternative medicine, because it didn't make the cut to be actual medicine. So these are the types of people who sell snake oil and all sorts of stuff that doesn't work. Just like Kash Patel, he was hawking some pill which like reverses the vaccine or something. He said it's like, how are you guys so skeptical of every medicine that comes on the market, no matter how many double-blind, placebo-controlled studies are? That doesn't work. They're poisoning us. But then you turn around and some freak blogger in the Midwest, writes some preposterous thing about how pineapple shavings cure HIV, and you're like, we found the cure for HIV.
Well, first of all, I want to correct myself. It was Ehud Barak, not Begin. So on the plane, still an Israeli prime minister. But I think that's the problem where now we can kind of tie it into the healthcare CEO killing. When the Democrats leave a vacuum on the issue of healthcare, it is filled by cranks and charlatans, as you say, who try to make your healthcare about your individual consumption choices. Right. When there's no concept of public health until you turn 65 and you get Medicare, what does your health become? It becomes individual choices. And we've now, with our corroded media environment and this online thing where it's difficult for people to determine, frankly, what's true and what's not, we have exacerbated that issue of when your individual healthcare choices are the totality of your the way that we're talking about healthcare. It creates an opportunity for people who are going to rip people off with these kooky treatments. Yeah. And I think it's also when the health insurers and the healthcare system is so mistrusted, rightly so, and exploitative, an alternative that you can buy on the internet or you hear a guy on Joe Rogan talking about it, that is more appealing to people because there's no concept of public health, which was also eroded in the pandemic.
That's right. That's right. I mean, these people have gone from being anti-big pharma to just anti-modern medicine. And the problem with big pharma, plain and simple, is capitalism. It's the profit motive. It's the price gouging. That's the problem. Guess what? The antibiotics work. The vaccines work. The medicine works, but they're charging you an arm and a leg for it. So the answer is to nationalize it, get the profit motive out of it. By the same token, what you're talking about for the health insurance industry, same thing. The answer is to give us single payer Medicare for all, get the profit motive out of it. I mean, these people, it is a parasitic mafia middleman that exists for absolutely no reason whatsoever. You got 18% administrative costs. Meanwhile, with Medicare, it's 2% administrative costs. That's why there's been a million studies that are like, hey, Medicare for all saves us $450 billion a year and saves 68,000 lives every single year, because then we wouldn't have anybody who doesn't have access to basic health care under a Medicare for all system. So people are really missing the forest for the trees here to act like, even the beating up on Big Pharma. It's like, yeah, we all agree Big Pharma is bad, but the answer is to nationalize it. That's the answer. The answer has nothing to do with pull 78,000 drugs off the market and lie about them relentlessly. Like, this is the problem. They're not just anti-Big Pharma. They're anti-modern medicine. And it is quite interesting, isn't it, that a lot of these people who go down that rabbit hole, they never end up talking about Medicare for all. They never end up talking about nationalizing Big Pharma. So, like, you're missing the obvious solutions. These things are not difficult to determine. They do a study like every other year with the Commonwealth Fund, look at all these developed countries and what their health insurance system is like and healthcare system. And every year we rank like at the dead bottom. We're 11th out of 11. We spend more than anybody else. We cover fewer people. We have worse health outcomes. People die much younger. Like, this stuff is not rocket science, but there's this massive propaganda effort, and this gets to the mainstream media, massive propaganda effort to make you believe, oh, that's just a bunch of noise and we actually have the best healthcare system in the world, which is something a lot of people casually believe. But I would recommend to everybody, and I said this a couple times on my show, go watch the Michael Moore documentary, Sicko. I don't care what your thoughts are on Michael Moore. Put it aside. Take my word for it. Just go take a look. And even if you're somebody who's like a wishy-washy centrist or whatever, I guarantee you come out of watching that documentary a changed person. And I would say the same thing for the documentary Iraq for Sale, The War Profiteers. Right. You will go from a wishy-washy centrist to Viva la Revolution, because it's facts. They're spitting facts in those documentaries, and the answers are actually relatively simple.
When did Sicko come out, by the way?
2007, and they released it, I think, online for free, if my memory is right. I remember that moment.
So the point there is 2007, Obama, he ran on healthcare, and then obviously the Affordable Care Act and Patient Protection Act came out of that, but there was no public option. A bunch of, we could go through and litigate that, but like
it was a giveaway to private health insurance.
Yes,
it was Romney Care, and it was sold to a bunch of people like us. Like, hey, this is a stepping stone to a public option or something like that in the future. And I think that was a lie, because all these companies, their profit and their power are way inflated compared to what they were 2013.
And when you see now how we've gotten to this point, right? And I think the pandemic did play into this erosion of this concept of public health and the government being able to provide health care. It's almost as if, because also the Democrats, and I think Obama and his influence was a big part of this, treated healthcare as solved. It allowed a nihilist like Donald Trump, or somebody who he's going to entertain them while the government doesn't deliver for them. It makes him more potent, because you have the Democrats being like, it's finished. We've got it. We'll strengthen the ACA. And all the while, I know that the patient protection part prevented the health insurers from denying people based on pre-existing conditions, which was a real benefit. And millions more people got insured. But they're still finding ways to deny you care. And people go, I'm paying $1,200 a month for this crap. I'm paying $2,000 a month for my family with this insurance. And then they're going to tell me they're not going to cover this? They're going to tell me, like, I can't get anesthesia for this surgery because of this? What is this? And I think that fundamental lack of trust in our society is really, and immiseration of people materially, is so fundamental to Trump's rise, and the fact that he was able to win talking about Arnold Palmer's cock once again.
Yeah, and it's particularly sad, right? Because you're 100% right. That's the core of the problem for sure. And under Trump the last time, 3 million people lost their health insurance, right? So, like, just objective failure. And under Democrats, to be fair, 50 million gained health insurance, which is good. And there are provisions of Obamacare we can point to: staying on your parents' insurance till you're 26, protecting pre-existing conditions, mandating 85% of the money actually goes to health care and not to bullshit. Like, all that stuff is good. But to your main point here, it's not enough. It's not enough. They're still price gouging people. People still, are getting denied claims left and right. And that's why you saw the reaction you saw after Luigi Mangione murked a health insurance CEO. That's why you saw people you would not expect. Wine moms on Facebook who lean pro MAGA are out there like, you know what? At least it wasn't a fucking normal person. Like, that's what these people are saying.
Right.
And, you know, it's time to do a little bit of introspection and try to, wow. But I don't see that in mainstream media. In fact, New York Times, I believe today, just dropped an opinion piece by a different health insurance CEO. I think it was actually a different United CEO wrote a piece, and it was like, they're right. We should fix the healthcare system. And it's like, you are the last person we need to hear from right now, bro. That's like Dick Cheney writing an article about not shooting people in the face.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Why would we hear from you? You're a parasite. You're a mafia middleman. People hate you for a goddamn reason.
Right. And I thought you were going to mention the Brett Stevens op-ed, which was in and of itself ridiculous, saying that he was the true man of the people, the healthcare CEO. But this was the one. Argument. This is the one you're referring to. The healthcare system is flawed. Let's fix it.
Fuck off. We don't want you in the conversation. We don't want you in the conversation. You don't deserve to be in the conversation. That's like saying, hey, we're trying to get rid of slavery. Let's invite a plantation owner to write an article about how slavery might be bad.
Yeah,
right.
it's like a tick saying, hey, the Lyme disease situation is out of control. Let's solve it. It's like...
Yeah, maybe you're not the best messenger for this. Lastly, Kyle, I don't want to keep you too long, but you've been pretty vocal about how you feel Joe Rogan has contributed to a lot of, I would say, the misinformation surrounding Donald Trump, and as just kind of sold out for, like, what was it, a $200 million contract with Spotify or whatever it is. I would argue that's corporate media, by the way. If you're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars for a corporation, it's difficult to call yourself independent at a certain point. Like,
if you're selling steak to investors.
Yeah, right. Like, what is your view of the place that we're at? And part of why I wanted to have you on is just like, you're resisting Trump. We are. A lot of other lefty media is doing that too. But I do think, like, there's been capture of the independent space in a way that was not the same when you and I probably both, you before me, but started doing this kind of thing. Rogan is a great example of it, though.
Yeah, I mean, I call these people now fake independent media, because that's exactly what they are. They're fake independent media. They're not real independent media. You have people like Tim Pool. You have people like Dave Rubin. You know, I'm sure you saw all that Tenet Media stuff where Lauren Chen had this Tenet Media company, and she took money directly from the Russian government, but she ended up giving some of that money to Dave Rubin and giving some of that money to Tim Pool. And Dave Rubin and Tim Pool, I love this. Their dodge is, look, we had no idea that was coming from the Russian government. We just thought some shady billionaire gave a bunch of money to Tenet Media, and then Tenet Media gave it to us. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the problem, isn't it? I've been doing this full time since 2012. I've never once had a conversation with a billionaire. I've never once had a conversation with an advertiser. The way that we raise money for our show is Patreon, donations that happen monthly, and Substack for Krystal, Kyle and Friends. We do it on Substack. And then outside of that, I just have what I call the default ads on YouTube, where there's this giant buffer, and, you know, I have no idea what's coming in and what's going out, etc. That, I think, is a model that is defensible, because I've tried to insulate myself from any malincentives. But if you call yourself independent media and you have $100 million, $200 million contract from Spotify, or you're taking money from shady billionaires left and right, or you're going to companies that contradict your values, your open express value, I'm sorry, that is no longer, you're not just independent media because you happen to be on the internet. Yeah. If you have the exact same incentive problems as the people in mainstream media, then you're fake independent media. You're not real independent media. And I'm now going to war, because what we saw is a lot of these people like Joe Rogan, you know, I was there. I was on his show 4 or 5 times. He would sit there and nod in agreement when I would make anti-Trump arguments and arguments in favor of a left-wing worldview. Then 3 weeks later, Ben Shapiro would come on and say the exact opposite of me on every issue, and he would nod along in agreement, right? And so at some point, you got to call a spade a spade. You're not independent media, and you're clearly just a vibes-based voter, right? You cocooned yourself in this right-wing echo chamber where you got right-leaning UFC people and right-leaning comedians, and Dana White, his boss, is super right-wing and loves MAGA. He put himself in this echo chamber. COVID helped to break his brain, and then look at that. He goes full MAGA. And you know what? That makes me look like a jackass, because I was the one going in there, taking him at face value, acting kind, holding his hand and walking him through it like he was a toddler on these topics. And then, wow, in retrospect, would you look at that? You completely flipped. I mean, we were defending him, unfortunately, way too late, right? When people were already on to, I don't know, man, he's saying a little bit more right-wing things here. And we would be like, well, no, look, here's a compilation of all the times Joe Rogan said base things. He argued for universal health care. He argued for free college. He argued for higher minimum wage and this good thing and that. And I would show that compilation and go, see, I don't know what you guys are talking about. But guess what? When you decide I'm going to endorse Donald Trump after he lied to your face relentlessly for the entire podcast, telling brazen lies, then I'm sorry, all the charity is gone, all the sympathy is gone, and I have to come to a different conclusion now. My conclusion of you could hold these people's hands and walk them through it and talk to them like they're reasonable and work it out. It just didn't work. It just didn't work. And that's why you see a much more bold, aggressive style out of me where I'm like, fuck these people and the horse they rode in on. Because if what I did before didn't work, okay, I got to try a different approach now. So if it's just call these people the fucking frauds they are, well, then guess what? We're going to call them the frauds that they are.
But don't be like hard on yourself in that way. I mean, Bernie Sanders did the same thing where he was trying to go there. And I thought at the point Rogan could be reasoned with in that way. And his audience, it was important to try to communicate with them. Like the thing is like go on all these platforms. It's like why I went on Tim Pool, but I'm going to go there in a way where I'm not going to try to get invited back. Like I'm going to go there and try to.
Right. Adversarial.
Right. At this point, specifically with explicitly right-wing outlets, you got to go in there and you've got to eat their lunch, because the only time that leftists get reinvited to these places is if you validate everything that they say. Right. And then that creates a perverse incentive for those leftist communicators as well, because there's so much more money on that side of the equation. It is awash in money, and we're kind of scraping by on our end because turns out like socialized healthcare and those kinds of policies, not necessarily the kind of thing that corporations want to fund in like a communications medium.
Yeah, and you have to be adversarial. There's no way around it. I mean, I even criticized Bernie. I understand what Bernie's trying to do when he says, I agree with Trump, cap credit card interest rates at 10%. I agree with Doge. We need to cut Pentagon spending. Like, I understand what he's trying to do, and I don't think he's a fraud or a sellout or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is, and we know this, they're full of shit. He's not going to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. They're not going to cut the Pentagon. Trump increased the Pentagon every time when he was president last time. So a better approach is to upfront and directly say, you're full of fucking shit. You're not going to do that. I know you're not going to do that. Oh, you want to prove me wrong? I would love it if you prove me wrong. I would love it if you did that, but you're not going to do that. So don't give them any false credibility, this idea. Maybe they'll do it. They're not going to fucking do it. They're not going to do it. And let's stop playing footsie with them. Let's call them out for what they are. So I would even say to Bernie, don't even bother. Don't even bother. We know what MAGA is. We saw them for the last 4 years. If anything, it's going to be worse this time. And I've become a lot harder on them. Not just the people at the top, but also, I mean, again, a lot of the voters. It is a lot of the voters. I have to say, the ones who never abandoned Trump through everything thick and thin, like whatever number you want to say it is, 30% of the country thereabouts. Whatever, I guess he bottomed out at like 30% after January 6th, like the day after they did a poll, he was around 30% support. That number, don't be under any illusions that there's any, with this one weird trick, you can get them to change their mind or flip their vote. Nonsense. These are enemies. Some people are just enemies, and you have to call it like it is. And unfortunately, that's not something that's really being embraced right now. But to be fair, since, we're some of the few who are actually doing it, you really do see a lot of people who are yearning for resistance, who are yearning for the truth, who are now fleeing like the MSNBC refugees and looking, at outlets like ours. And I do think there's an opportunity here, not to flip, maybe the populist right will agree with us. No, wrong. They're not. That's liberals. Over. It's done. Forget it. Liberals. Yep. Exactly. It's the liberals who are the ones who slowly but surely are going, you know what? I think they might be right about single-payer healthcare. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe Obamacare didn't go far enough. Like, those are the ones who you're going to get.
I totally agree with you. And then, of course, like independents or people who are lower propensity voters. But those are the people the Democrats should be targeting anyway, which they didn't last election cycle. But I'm glad we're aligned on tactics. Really appreciate you coming on today, Kyle, and chatting with us. Anything you want to plug in particular?
No, I mean, everybody could find me on YouTube at Secular Talk. You could check out Krystal, Kyle, and Friends and all that fun stuff. And thank you very much for having me. And I appreciate you showing my Beans tweet.
Yes, it's burned into my memory. Thanks so much, Kyle.
All right, thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, with that, we are going to wrap up the free part of this program and head into the fun half, where we will take your calls, read your IMs, have some fun. On ESPN, yeah. Oh, well, actually, let's do this first before we do. So we mentioned this GoFundMe earlier in the week. Bana, their Instagram account was taken down, apparently. Twitter, I'm sorry. Suspended for her portraits of people supporting Palestinians. I mean, I don't understand. Yeah. So I don't know what the suspension is for, but if you would like to support that GoFundMe, here it is. The link is there you go. The link is below. So anyway, that's just, we're seeing a lot of that on social media right now.
Yeah, also free Brianna Boston. We haven't talked about that, but
we'll talk about it in the fun half.
Yeah, the free speech stuff is it's interesting. It's apparently censorship has been conquered, but yeah, I don't know. All
right, well, Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Yeah, Left Reckoning. We had Danny Bessner on and a sheik from the DSA talking about World War and where the DSA is going in 2025. Check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
And on ESPN yesterday, we gave our picks against the spread. YouTube.com/ESPN show. Had some fun there. Folks, if you want a last-minute holiday gift, go to shop.majorityreportradio.com. Limited edition and Majority Report shirts. You can buy those there. And we also have our limited edition 20th anniversary mugs, where you can get that at shop.majorityreportradio.com. All right. We are going to head into the... Oh, no, not yet. Matt has that very cool hat on now. I like that new style, the golf thing with the rope across it.
Yeah, new Left Reckoning hats up at leftreckoning.com/store.
All right. The number is 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second. Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's...
Stop talking for a second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello? Is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports.
We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm going to go start watching.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero sum